Champions Mojo is part of the CG Sports Network.
Welcome to the award-winning Champions Mojo, hosted by two world record-holding athletes and health, life, and leadership coaches. Be inspired as you listen to Conversations with Champions. And now, your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hey, Maria.
Hi, Kelly. Great to be here today.
Oh, Maria, I know you and I are both super excited. Before we give our guest her proper introduction, let's just welcome her to the show. Hello, Miss Virginia Walden Ford. Welcome to Champions Mojo.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to give you the proper introduction, which you deserve. Virginia Walden Ford is an incredible leader and a champion. So if you're a regular listener to Champions Mojo, you know we talk to a lot of athletic champions, but we love the dual meaning of champion. So champion is winning, triumphing at life, but also championing a cause. And so Miss Virginia is a champion of a great cause, which you're going to learn more about, but you may know her from the Netflix movie Miss Virginia, which is about her life, and it stars Uzo Aduba, and also Uzo plays Miss Virginia in the movie, and Matthew Modine, who plays her attorney, Cliff Williams, who is also a champion with her cause. Miss Virginia's role as one of America's most important and historically significant voices for parent empowerment. And she walks the halls of the U.S. Capitol and has spent her lifetime fighting to create new educational opportunities for children and families. But there's more on this celebrity, Maria. Could you share that?
Sure. As a mother, Virginia fought to create educational opportunities for her three children and other children living in the Washington, D.C. area when she realized that because they lived in the wrong area, the wrong zip code, they weren't getting the education they deserved. In 1998, she and a group of parents took action at the grassroots level to help create a program to provide scholarships for low-income children to attend private schools. Since then, she spent her life educating and encouraging other parents to learn about school choice options. And besides the major motion picture Miss Virginia, she's the author of two books, most recently School Choice, A Legacy to Keep. So without further ado, welcome Miss Virginia.
Thank you. Again, it's great to be here.
So I want to just start off creating a little picture for this cause that you championed in 1998. And we're not talking 50 years ago. When I read your book and watched the movie, I was thinking, gosh, this seems like something that would have happened in 1998. But Maria and I are both Virginia girls. We grew up in the DC area. So we're right. We know, the area that you lived in, the area that we're talking about. And so what happened in 1998 is you and your three children were living in the DC area, and you saw this huge disparity between the education availability for low-income children versus those with a high income. And it was just a huge disparity. And it's a poignant story. Can you share with us the kind of initial spark that got this fire blazing? Like, tell us a story. What was it that just kicked you over, that made you say, I got to do something?
Well, interestingly enough, Kelly, my two of my kids really were pretty, driven educationally, so they were doing pretty well. But my youngest son, William, was really struggling in school, and he also was getting pulled into negative things in the community. He was selling drugs and running around with a really, really tough gang. And he was only 13, 14, 15 years old during this time. That was when I saw that something had to be done. I could no longer sit back and just watch my child fail. I saw too many children in that community that were in trouble, in jail, just really not in school. And William was one of those kind of kids that I would take him to school and he'd watch my car pull off and then he'd leave. And so I was always getting these calls saying, William's not in school. And I was going, yeah, he is in school. I dropped him off this morning. And they would say, well, he's not here now. And it became very clear that I had to do something to save my child, but I didn't know what. I mean, I was working hard to just provide a roof over my children's heads and to feed them, and I didn't even know how to get started. And somebody said to me, you know, you need to go to the school board, or you need to go to talk to teachers. Well, teachers usually dismissed me after my first sentence, and they say, you know, he's not worth fighting for. And, you know, he's going to end up in the street. I don't even know why you're wasting your time. And teachers actually said that to me. And then I'd go to school board meetings and try to talk about the children in our community, including my own, which were failing. And they'd listen for a minute and go to the next thing on the agenda. And it was just hard for me to even imagine what I could do. I mean, I was a single mother, young, you know, trying to make my way in the world with absolutely no help. And I didn't know what to do. And I did not enjoy being in public. I did not enjoy standing in front and talking to people. I was one of those parents that sat back and let everybody else do the talking. I build the scenery, I make the costumes, I bake the cake, but I didn't want to be the president. I wanted to be the on the committee, you know. And but it became really clear to me that somebody had to say something. I was seeing too many kids in our neighborhood, not just the community, but just in my block that were not doing well. We all had single mothers that were trying to make it, and you know, it became just really clear to me that I had to speak up, you know, and I had to put aside whatever fears I had of speaking in public. I mean, I was so bad that they'd ask me to read the scripture at church and I couldn't do it. I'd get faint. So, I mean, I
Wow.
really did not like speaking in public. And but you know what I learned is that when you're talking about your child, or you're talking about something that's really really important to you, you find the words come from somewhere. And I could, all of a sudden I began to be able to talk about the children and to talk about what was happening with my son. And but that's pretty much the only thing I can talk about. I could at that point, at least. I mean, you give me another subject, and then I get faint again. But I could talk about what kids needed and what I needed to do to make that happen, or what people needed to do to make that happen. And that was kind of how it started. I was really lucky because I spoke before the Dick Army's Education and Task Force Committee in 1997. And evidently I made an impact on them. So they started encouraging me to go and talk in the communities and do that kind of thing. And it was hard, but it became so good. It empowered me. It empowered the people I spoke with. And that was kind of the beginning of it. It just went from there. I stuck with it. I encouraged other parents to stick with it. I led all kind of meetings and efforts, which just built up my confidence in myself. And before I know it, but this went on for a long time, you know, before we got to where we knew we could make a difference in DC at least.
I am so inspired by that part of the stories. What you did is amazing, and but the way you overcame. I mean, I know what it's like to be afraid to speak in front of people. So my question for you, and I think this will help people, is, you know, those first 5, 10, 15, 20 times that you had to stand up, and when you were quaking in your boots. You know, what did you draw on? How did you overcome that just, terror?
You know, I prayed. I'm gonna tell you, I'll be honest. In the beginning, when I knew that was going to happen, I would say, Lord, just put the words in my mouth and give me the courage to say them. Period. That was what I did. But one time, funny story. One time, I decided I'd have a glass of wine, and I don't drink. And so I had my little glass of wine, and then I was too drunk to speak because it just went right through my head. but somehow I calmed down and I managed to get a speech, but that never happened again. I never took a sip of wine, but so it was
So
that.
wine
But
is not the way.
no, but
So,
mostly
yeah.
I prayed but also, and this is something that people have told me has been helpful. I looked at the people in the audience and I looked at their faces and I thought to myself, what can I say that will help them? Because there were always frowns or sad faces. And the first person that smiled would give me the courage to speak, and I would. It was amazing. I watched faces light up and people saying, this is information I can use, and maybe she really can help me. But if you don't mind, I can tell you about the very first time I spoke to a huge group was in DC and Southeast and a public housing project where it was mandatory to come to this particular meeting. So they didn't want to be there. And it was a public housing project with about 600 families. And so it was all these mothers, mostly mothers, sitting out there rolling their eyes, not wanting to be there, but they had to be there. And the lady who ran it was this wonderful, kind lady that said, when you get up there, tell your story. Tell your story. And I said, okay. And first, I started off just giving them some basic information, and I saw quickly that wasn't getting them. They were still turning heads and rolling eyes and not listening. But then I said, but I have a son, and I'm so scared for him. And this is why I'm afraid for him. And then I told them my story and how afraid I was of losing William to the streets. And in the movie, they call him James, but his name is William. And I was terrified. I didn't want my child to be a part of the statistics of kids that, especially African American boys, that end up in jail or on the streets or drug addicted. And I was scared. And I told them that, and I watched them one by one. People started listening. One by one, faces started looking into mine. And I realized that right at that moment, I was not just somebody speaking at a meeting they really didn't want to be in. I was somebody that was a mother just like them, that they could connect with and they could believe in. That was really a great defining moment for the work I was going to do, and but it also gave me a sense of maybe I can make a difference. Maybe I can do something special. I don't know, but when you're trusted, when all of a sudden you can see in somebody's face that they believe you, or they believe that you can make a difference in their lives, it's empowering. It's incredible. It was an incredible moment for me, and I saw it. And from that point on, I knew that a part of all of this was keeping people trusting, telling them the truth, making hopefully they will believe what I was saying. I mean, these communities, poor communities, black, white, doesn't matter. They're so accustomed to people coming into the community saying, we're going to do something to change your lives. I mean, and then they didn't, or they disappear, or they would do something that would be detrimental to their lives. And I knew that as long as I fulfill my promise to them, that together we could make a difference. And we did.
So that's what I would love our listeners to hear. So tell us what difference you made, because we painted the picture, and again, Maria and I know this area, so I know I had a lot of friends. I was born in Washington D.C., born in George Washington Hospital, and
No
so
kidding.
yep, right there, I am a D.C. girl. So I know that any of my friends that lived in D.C., we were 6 miles from the White House where I grew up. We were in Northern Virginia. We had A-rated schools, Fairfax County, some of the best schools you can get. But I
Yep.
knew any of my friends that lived in D.C. went to private schools.
Yep.
Because the DC schools were terrible. So that's
They
what
were.
you were fighting this. So tell our listeners, like, so what is it that you accomplished? And what were some of the biggest obstacles to get there? And what were you promising these people? Like, so what, because it was more than just standing up and telling people
Your story.
we can make a difference. It was
Yeah.
you changing law, changing huge obstacles. So tell us, what did you accomplish, and what were some of the biggest obstacles?
Well, okay, first and foremost, you said it, DC has some of the worst schools in that region. And it was so ridiculous to me that Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, had these schools that were not serving kids well, and they were violent. And, kids were, at the time that we began to fight our fight, the dropout rate was 46% in
Oh my
public
gosh.
schools. And there was violence in the schools. And girls were getting pregnant at alarming rates at 15, 16 years old, and boys were going at alarming rates going to jail. So I knew what we had to do was provide a way for them to see another educational environment, another something else that would get them interested and want them to become involved in their own education. And that, to us at that time, there are 146 private schools in DC. And at that time, we were wanting to provide some kind of resources for kids to go to private schools in DC, and in the background work with DCPS to get schools doing better. It was like Harriet Tubman, she took 600 slaves out of slavery, but she worked behind the scenes to abolish slavery. So that's kind of the way I thought of it. I'm going to get kids out of DCPS now, and then we're going to work hard to make sure that the kids that have to remain get a better education. We're all going to work together for the benefit of kids. So our proposal was a scholarship program that would provide resources for kids to go to private schools, and the private schools would be partners with the parents in educating their children. And so what we did is we went around and talked to all the private schools who were willing to be partners to this kind of proposal, and to make sure that kids, many of them were looking to change the demographics of their school. They wanted African American, Hispanic, and Asian kids in their schools, and this would provide a way to be able to do that. So it created diversity in the private schools in DC. But because the way DC is run, we had to go to Congress, and anybody, even though we have mayor and the city council, our primary education money or some monies come from the federal government. So we had to go to the federal government. Now, Cliff Williams in the movie represents a whole bunch of different members of Congress. We just put them together in one person. So in every scene in the movie, I see a different member of Congress that I work with in this one man. And Matthew Modine did an amazing job of doing that, where it felt good to me. And I could see all those great members of Congress that I work with. So we went to Congress and proposed that a scholarship program be put in place, that be funded for $2 million, which would have provided scholarships for a couple of thousand kids. And but then we had to take it through Congress. And so when you have a federal program that you're fighting for in Congress, you have to go to all these different members of Congress who have no vested interest in DC. They didn't care about DC kids. I mean, they cared about the people in their states that voted for them. And so we had to convince them, the groups that I was working with, we knew we had to convince them that DC kids mattered, and that this program should be put in place to allow DC kids to have something available to them that would give them a better educational experience. And so that's what we did, except they didn't bet on us having thousands of parents doing this. And at the height of the fight, there were probably more than 2,000 parents, low income, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian families involved in the legislative fight. And each one of those families believed what I told them. Somebody always said, I didn't wake up wanting to be the face of this fight, but somebody has to be the face of the fight and somebody has to be willing to do it. And I was. And they believed what I said. That's why I love them so much and I love our fight so much, because what I said to them was, we are going to find a way to make sure our children have resources to go to schools that will help them, thrive in educational environments. And they believed me. And my sisters didn't believe me, so I was like surprised. But one of the parents told me one time, there's something about your face. It's something that when you speak to people, we believe you, we trust you. And any leader knows that one of the first things that's important for any cause, whether it's education or whatever, is that you have a leader that you can trust, that you can believe in. And so initially, that was important to me, trying to make sure that they believed in me and they trusted me. But it became, and that's why um, I am called grandma, a mama, a big sister by thousands of people,
Oh, lovely.
because that's what they needed to be to me. And that's what I needed to be to them. And I remember my children saying to me, that lady just called you mama, mama. And, does she have to? But I became like a mother. And for some of the younger families, I became like grandma. And all the kids called me Miss Virginia, grandma, or, you become this unit. And even though it's thousands of people, it's a wonderful unit. And whatever you're fighting for, or whatever you're leading, that becomes really necessary in making sure that you can move forward with whatever your goal is. And that's what we did. We became this family. And people laugh and they say, a family of 2,000? Yeah. We were this family. And I got to be mama, but sometimes there were others who had stepped up into a different kind of role and they got to be the mamas. And so it was more than just a legislative fight. It was a family. And there was an army too, but it was a family. And we believed in each other and they believed what I said, but we had to convince Congress to believe us, and we did. And we went to every member of Congress's office, in the House, in the Senate, and left our calling card or asked for a meeting or just wrote our names on the sign-in sheets to let them know, because somebody has said prior to us starting this fight that DC parents would never fight for their children. There was such a negative feeling about low-income parents in DC that somebody actually said to me, "Oh, you're not gonna get people to fight for this." And I went, "We'll see." And so when we did, people were surprised. They were surprised at how many people stepped up and how many people testified before Congress. Excuse me, and how many people found their voices. My mantra is find your voice.
Mm.
And people will listen.
One of the things, you are such a great leader, because this is not a pack of Girl Scouts. This is not a troop of West Point cadets.
You're right.
One of the most poignant scenes in the movie for me was that you got that they show a kid off the street who's a drug dealer. He's in trouble, but people that rallied around you were some criminals, some really bad seeds, and they collected signatures. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but there is a scene in there that made me cry, and I think you know which one I'm talking about.
I do. It makes me cry too.
Yeah. So,
to remember.
So the people that you got to rally around this cause were the forgotten and the people who never had a voice. So, tell us a little bit more about how people can find their voice?
We tell people, Kelly, that everybody has a story. Everybody. And when you're sitting around saying, I have nothing to say, or my life doesn't mean anything, we show parents the value of not only their lives, but of many things they've done. My pastor always said, there's a blessing in everything you do. You just got to find it sometime. And that's sort of our message to parents who were not accustomed to speaking out. They didn't feel like they had the right to speak out. They didn't feel that not only would nobody listen, but they didn't even deserve to be able to. And we just taught them that they have to recognize the value in their lives, and they have to recognize that they have a story. And this is a good story. We were talking to members of Congress, and we were going to the head of the Appropriations Committee for the House, who had issued a statement the day before saying, I will never vote for a scholarship program for DC. And we said, okay, you haven't dealt with us yet. So the next day, we went to his office, and it was about maybe 50 or 60 of us, and we signed his little book. And right as we were signing, he walked in, and he asked his assistant or receptionist, I guess, who are these people? And of course, we had T-shirts that said DC Parents for School Choice, so that wasn't too hard. And he said, when she told him, he said, well, maybe I need to talk to them. And I said, that's a really good idea. And he went to his conference room, he found seats for all of us. And for 2.5 hours, he listened to our stories. 2.5 hours. And he was so touched visibly. But we didn't even realize how touched he was until the next day when he recommended that people vote for this program, and that he was going to be the first vote in support. And he had been adamant about not supporting this program. So we learned that if we carry ourselves with dignity and information, and we speak our stories, that all kinds of things couldn't happen. And they did.
So beautiful.
It was great.
I love that. So, you didn't become this lioness that you are or have been for the last 20 years overnight. And right? So
No.
you told us sort of the why. You had the son, you love your son, he was failing. But for those of us who might feel like, oh, I could never do that, or I could never become that. Are you surprised looking back at, the woman that you were as, a young single mom to this lioness? I was trying to think of another word, that you are now. Are you surprised? And what encouragement do you have for others who might say, I could never do that. I could never become a leader like that.
I am surprised sometimes, delighted, but surprised. I just talked to somebody the other day that said, kind of asked me something similar, and I went, never in 5,000 million years would I have thought that I would become a speaker for anything. That just wasn't who I was. And yet, if you go far back into when I was a teenager, I did display some leadership qualities. I was saved when I was 17, and I was a president of the youth group at the church. But it didn't require going out and speaking to a whole bunch of people. It required praying, and I thought I was pretty good at that. But, but then I also had to remember that I was one of the second group, the largest group of Black kids to go into the Little Rock Central High School after the Little Rock Nine. Now, the Little Rock Nine were 9 Black kids that went in, and the governor barred the door and called out Arkansas state troops, and there were crowds of people that were mean to them, and they really had a really difficult time. But they were strong and full of courage, and they went into Central, the 9 of them, despite all the obstacles that got in their way. And And I was only 6 years old when that happened, but I remember even at 6 years old understanding that there was something really serious going on. And my parents were teachers and civil rights activists, and I remember in gatherings they would put the kids in a little room, but we would listen to them pray and talk about how difficult this was, and everybody was playing, but for some reason I understood something was going on even at 6 years old. And so as time went on, I would see things and I was involved to a certain extent, but I was never the leader of anything. And then when I entered Little Rock Central High School, we weren't, how kids are excited to go to high school. Well, I didn't want to go to Little Rock Central High School. I wanted to go to the all Black high school in Little Rock. And I was adamant with my parents about it. I don't want to go there. I want to follow Gail, my older sister, and I want to, be on the drill team, and I want to do all these things. And the boys were cute over there and all that. My parents just totally ignored me and said, "You are going to Central." But what had happened was the federal government had come to, during the Little Rock Nine time, Governor and President Eisenhower sent in federal troops to protect the Little Rock Nine for the entire year they were that they entered the school. And so in the 60s, I won't age myself, but in the 60s, late 60s, the federal government came back and said, Little Rock, you have to continue the desegregation process. We sent federal troops here and it doesn't look good. So you need to send some more Black kids into Central. So my parents, like I said, were teachers. All of their friends were teachers or preachers or lawyers or civil rights activists. And they kind of handpicked 139 of us to go to Central. And I didn't want to be one of them. I was mad. But the first day of school, but I lost. I lost. My mom and daddy won. And the first day of school, when dad was dropping, I have an identical twin. So the first day of school, when daddy was dropping Harriet and I off to school, I said, again, I don't want to go here, daddy. And instead of fussing at me or dismissing me, he said, Jenny, you have a response. They call me Jenny, my nickname. You have a responsibility to go to that school, to do well, to make a difference. You have a responsibility. Do you not understand that? You have younger sisters. And if you don't do well at Central, how will that look to them? And I was 14, and I remember thinking, well, that makes sense. You should have said that to me before now. It made sense. And that's something I've carried forever. I mean, I hear my father's words even now, 50 years later. I hear him saying, you have a responsibility to make a difference. So what I tell people who are in the midst of making decisions to go after their goals or dreams or to fight for a cause or whatever, I say, we have a responsibility to serve our communities. We have a responsibility to fight for what we believe is right. We have a responsibility to stand up and use our voices. And no matter what, nobody can stop you. The Constitution provides for you to use your voice. And we are Americans. And so, it like my father affected me all those years ago, that seems to really affect parents or people that I'm talking to about going forward. Everybody wants to know that their lives make a difference, that their lives are important, and that they can do things that can change the world. Never would I thought that this would have happened the way it happened. Never would I thought that I'd had the opportunity and the privilege to change the world. And I thank God every day for allowing me to be able to be a part of making a difference. Because if anybody knows, DC is the fishbowl. And so for us to be successful in DC really inspired a lot of people around the country who said, well, if they can do it in DC, we can certainly do it here, wherever. And I've heard from parents if all over America saying to me, I did it because I knew you could, you did it. And that makes me, it really pleases me because that's all I ever wanted to say. We can do this game. We don't have to sit around and watch our children fail and watch our children get in trouble and watch our children not be inspired or thrive in education. We can say something, and that's what we do.
Oh, such nuggets, such amazing. And
Oh,
you know, we have a
yes.
lot of young listeners that may not even the words all black high school don't even
I know.
they don't even I mean that's just like that is so far in history, thank goodness, that I know they don't
It
even
is.
so you telling your story is such a great testament to how things do change. And it's
Well,
amazing. And we just encourage people to read the book, watch
yeah,
the movie. It's
yeah,
on Netflix.
yeah.
Watch it tonight.
And
Um,
I
It
but
I
is.
just want to, you have a responsibility to make a difference. How many people
Yes.
have heard that? I'm going to tell my go tell my kids that today. That's
and
a
I
Maria,
told mine.
yes, yeah, and Maria, you and I have done that, and we've
we've
lived
tried
that, and
to.
that's
We
why the champions. Maria's lost her sister to brain cancer and started a charity to raise money for brain cancer. I got hit with this weird skin condition, and I started a charity to help with that. There's nothing too weird in your life, listeners, that you are passionate about that you can't share your voice
right
and
when
make
you
a
feel the
difference.
call, right? When
Yeah,
you say,
Absolutely.
then you
yeah.
need to respond to it. When you feel that you hear the voice and
And it doesn't
Absolutely.
it doesn't always have to be world changing. It
no,
can just
No.
change the neighborhood community garden. You know, it does.
yeah,
Yes.
It can just be something small. So
Yeah.
let's get
Can I
yeah,
let me share
yes,
this one thing
yes,
with you real
sure.
quick?
yeah.
When I moved back to Arkansas, I moved back to Arkansas about 12 years ago from DC. I want to be home. My mother was getting older, and so it's been a great few years. She passed away, but it
Mm.
was great being here with her. But we bought the house, my twin and I bought the house right next door to my mother because she wouldn't move out of the neighborhood, which is the community we grew up in. And I remember a neighbor, and we had a beautiful lawn, and we painted and renovated the house and did all this stuff, and it was really nice because houses in old neighborhoods sometimes are allowed to not look so good, and so we fixed it up and did the yard. And I remember a neighbor coming over a week or so after we had been in there, and he said, y'all yard looks so nice. You are encouraging everybody to cut their grass. Have you noticed all these people's lawns are looking really nice now? And because they don't want anybody to say, "Oh, that lady grass looks good, mine looks terrible." But I remember thinking, even those kind of situations are inspirational. You can, just by cutting your grass, you can make a difference in your community. And so I told my children, who are all these wonderful, wonderful adults now, and I tell my children all the time, whatever you do in your life, really make a difference. Do something special. And I have three amazing kids who listen, and that's what we try to tell parents. You can make the biggest difference in your city, your community, with your family, if you're willing to say, I can make a difference. Speak out, use your voice with love and peace and encouragement and confidence and all of those positive things. You can make a difference.
Oh, awesome.
I don't think we
I
can
want to,
say anything else.
but
So, Kelly,
Thank
no,
you.
I want to talk the
Okay.
fun stuff. Let's get
Okay,
to
okay,
Hollywood.
okay.
I got it. I said I want to talk the fun stuff Hollywood, even though I pronounced her name wrong. Uzo Aduba is one of my favorite actors. I
Oh,
love
she's
her. I loved
amazing.
her. Orange is the New Black. She was so amazing in that, and she was amazing in your movie. And of course, Matthew Modine, we know. So give us a little scoop on Uzo and Matthew Modine. We just got to hear some scoop because you were on the set when they were filming this. So your book publicist, our producer Katie, said there's a story with you and Mr.
Oh, that's
Modine, but
right.
but I
That's
also
right.
we also want to hear a little bit what Uzo's like in person because I just love
Okay.
him.
Oh, yeah, I do too. Well, the right before the movie started shooting, she asked to meet me and my family. So she came to DC. I went to DC, and we spent the weekend together. She is the absolute kindest person I've ever met. She's just wonderful. And my kids fell in love. My son, who also watched Orange is the New Black, when he just found out she was going to play me, he was in awe. I mean, he was like, "Ma, do you know who's gonna play you?" And I was, "Well, yeah, you know." And he said, "No, you don't understand. She's my favorite actress in the whole wide world." And this
He's
was
really
before I
good.
met her. So he was awestruck that day. And my daughter and my granddaughter came down, and she was just so nice to them. You know, you expect, or I don't know what I expect. I'd never met Hollywood actors, and so I didn't, I had stereotypes. And she came in and sat down and started talking to the kids and talking to me, and just asking me questions about my life. And then we went out for a couple of meals. We went to the African American Museum. It just opened. She and I toured it together. It was just the two of us. And she was just amazing. And so and at that point, unlike my kids, I really did not know who much about her. I have since learned a lot about her, but I didn't at that point. And she was just very kind and loving. And at one point, she said, "I'd like to go off with your children, if you don't mind." Go off with my children. What you talking about children? And she said, "No, I'm just going to take them to another room and we're going to have a conversation." And so when they were gone for about an hour and a half. And when they got back, um, we finished whatever we were doing. And then on the way home, I said to the kids, what happened? What occurred? And she said, and my daughter said, she just wanted to ask us what you would like as a mother.
Hmm.
And what we were like as kids growing up. And she's not a mother, so she felt like she needed to hear from the kids on what I was like as a mother. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, to have her talk to them. And so she was amazing. She did a great job. I was really pleased with her performance. But she did things like she really studied me, because I don't there's a scene where I'm talking to the congresswoman and the principal, and people who haven't seen the movie will see this. And I'm using, well, you saying I use my hands a lot. I mean, that is, I cannot even stop that. And in that scene, she uses her hands as she talks. And so after I saw it, I said, "So Uzo, so you like me? Are you like me? You use your hands?" She said, "Never." She said, "I saw in a clip that you use your hands." And so it seemed real for me to use my hands. And so she really studied me. And I appreciated that, because even to my own kids, um, my son came out of the movie and said, "Oh my God, she sounds just like you, you know." And there are parts of the movie where she does sound just like me. I can see myself in her. And so she was good. She was good. We didn't have many funny things, but Matthew and I had a really funny thing. And so I have to tell you about that. Well, once the movie was done and all the actors that I met were wonderful, I fell in love with the young man who played my son. Because he reminds me of my son. And but I fell in love with all of the actors. They were professional, they were wonderful, they were determined to get it right, and they did. And So it was a really pleasant experience working with Movie Picture Institute, which is a film company that did the film and the actors. I didn't expect it to be such a great experience, and it was. But after the movie was done, and so we did a pre-screening of 7 city pre-release screenings, and we started in New York, which that's always like a big deal, and then we went to DC and then some other places. But so we're in Philadelphia now, and they're in this old theater that has these long steps, and so you go down all these steps and you get to the stage, and it had lights around the stage. I thought there was a step up, but I thought it was flat, but it wasn't. It was and there were 800 people in the audience, and the actors, some of the actors, and some of the staff, and I misstepped and fell like flat on my face with 800 people watching me, and I was just gonna lay there and like be dead or something. I wasn't gonna get up. And then I felt somebody grab me, and it was Matthew Modine. And he was like, "Oh my God, let me help you up. And are you okay?" And he was, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And, and then he said, "Are you gonna be okay?" And then a group of young men helped me up. And at that moment, I realized that if I acted hurt, then people would lose the whole meaning of the movie. And we were getting ready to have a discussion about the movie they had just seen. And I didn't want these 800 people to leave the theater, and the only thing they remembered was me falling flat on my face. So I got up and I acted like I was okay, which I really was. How you hurt a little bit when you fall. But so after we did this great discussion and interacted with the audience and stuff, at the end of it, Matthew came over and rubbed my foot. He pulled my shoe off and he rubbed my foot. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And in my brain, I was going, "Yeah, Matthew Modine is rubbing my foot. No, I'm fine." And Katie didn't get a picture. But it was the funniest thing. I laughed about this forever because I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm good." This is the memory I'll carry for the rest of my life. So we have some moments, but the actors were all great. I mean, everybody was so kind and so loving, and it was just a really, really wonderful experience. And I had read where other people who had stories made about them didn't have such wonderful experiences, but mine was great. They were fair, they were honest, they incorporated my thoughts into every moment of that film. They called me so many times when they were making it, when they were producing it. At night I just sit up and wait for them to call me because they wanted to verify everything that's going on. There were some hard scenes, and the one you were speaking of earlier, Kelly, that's hard for me too. That's real hard,
Yeah.
And I think of this young man a lot, who was murdered, and so it was an amazing experience. One I would go through anytime, but and Maria, never in a million years did I ever think anything like this would ever happen to me. God has been so good. I'm really blessed because, but this is not just my story, and I hope your listeners will understand. This is my story, but it's a story that has been duplicated by hundreds of thousands of parents all over the country. So this is their story as well. Oh, excuse me. This is their story too. And I did this film to honor all parents who found their voices, who stood up for their children, who really wanted to make a difference in not just their kids' lives, but every child's life.
That is so beautiful. I know, Maria, I feel like I'm drinking at the well of wisdom, and
do
I
too.
cannot let you go without asking you a question that is just coming to me, which is, so you're when I look at your life, I feel like this is a woman who has lived her purpose and accomplished her mission. And now, and Maria and I are in the last half of our life. When one does that, when we have a lot of Olympians that win gold medals and then they get depressed because their whole life was about that and they have to find another purpose. So now that you have this huge accomplishment, you've gone down in history, you've got a movie, you've got a book, your life has, when you hit the pearly gates, there's going to be a processional that rolls you right in and said, Virginia Walden
Come
Ford,
on in.
come on in. And,
Thank you.
and so where does Virginia Walden Ford go from here? What wakes you up every morning?
I'm still concerned about children. I'm still involved in talking to parents, but I am at a different place. I am an advisor more than a actual activist. I'm not in the midst of the fight, but my heart is still in the fight. I told parents a long time ago, and I have repeated it recently, as long as I'm able, as long as I'm physically and mentally able, I will fight with them. I will never go away. And I'm sure the press and a lot of other people wish I would go away, but I won't. As long as I can, I have 4 grandchildren and who look up to me, who expect me to be there for them. But there are thousands of children around the country whose parents are just learning their voices and they need to hear from the elders. Growing up, the people that gave me the best advice were my elders, my grandmother, my great aunts. They told me how to be a woman, how to move forward in life. And as I got older and I could remember them talking to me, they have stayed with me. They're in my heart and in my spirit. So as long as I'm physically and mentally able, I will fight for children to get a quality education. That's my thing. That's my fight. And but I also will spend time with my kids and my grandkids. And but I'll do this as long as I can. I have the pandemic has been hard for me because I've not been able to travel, and I am best at being in a room with a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of children. I like that as much as anything I do. And so, but I've learned technology. I'm here today because I have learned, because I still wanted my voice to be heard even during this time. So I will continue. Now I can add this on when I can't travel. I can do it virtually, and that's what I want to continue doing. I'm not a kid, but I'm not elderly.
You're not done yet.
I'm not. Thank you. I ain't done yet. So I will be here. I will.
Well, that's
wonderful. One last question from me, and then Maria, you can ask the last question. What is your advice to heal race relations in this country?
I think about it, and I think let me think. I got a call from a friend who happened to be white, right as things were being kind of the upheaval in the country early in the pandemic. And she was in tears. And this is somebody I just absolutely love. And an older woman, she and I've been through a lot together. We've known each other for over 20 years. And she was in tears and she said, Jenny, have I ever done anything to make you feel bad or less than? And I was like, no, we have figured out how to work this whole issue. At least she and I did. And I started talking and she calmed down and we were okay. But I believe that we all have to work together, Black and white, to make sure that the right messages are getting out, that we're understanding and we're hearing that if this country is going to make it, then we all have to work together. It's almost like, the children, if the kids are gonna, if the kids were gonna make it during our fight, then we all had to work together to make sure that no matter what color, what race, what culture a child was, that child has the same um, ability to get into a school that better serves them. And I think in America we have to learn how to do that. I think that there's a lot of us who black. I used to joke and say, I got three issues. I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm a single mother, take me or leave me because I do. But I think that we just have to all start listening to each other and working together and hearing what the other is saying, and not being um so quick in judging and either on either side. I mean, I think it's just really hard. It's really hard for me because I have successfully have friends of every race and every culture, and not been but I it's not been bad for me within my friends, but I have been in rooms sometimes where I could feel people not wanting me there, or people not wanting to hear what I said. And if they spent too much time during the legislative fight talking about that I was black because I'm so light skinned, I guess people questioned it. And so too many people said it, as if somebody had to say it. But my dad, again, I'm gonna go back to my daddy. My dad told me when when he was the first black assistant superintendent of Little Rock School District. And a lot of people, and this was 1957, and a lot 67, and a lot of people didn't want him to get that job. My dad was the most wonderful, amazing man ever. And so everybody within the school system, school administration wanted him to have the job, but there were other people. So 2 weeks after he got the job, the Ku Klux Klan burned a cross in our yard and threw a brick through our window. And it scared us, me and my sisters. There were 5 girls, and we had a young baby. And so it scared my sisters and my mom, and it made Daddy pretty mad. But when he got over his being mad about the cross burning and the rock coming through the window, and we were crying and we were really mad. And I'm sure I was 13 or 14. I'm sure I said something that I probably shouldn't have said, and about the people that probably did this. And my dad said, I want you girls to understand this right now. When you grow up, you're gonna try to be kind and loving and Christian, and you're gonna not judge people based on, and Dr. King said it, you're not gonna judge people based on their skin color. You're not gonna just automatically not like somebody because they're white or whatever. You're gonna choose your friends and your relationships and your life on character and love, period. And then he comforted us about what had happened. And he explained to us that there's always going to be people that try to push you into being something you're not. And interestingly enough, my pastor preached this yesterday. Last Sunday. You're always going to find people that try to push you. They're going to push you to be not walking in Christ's footsteps, and I remember that night like it was yesterday, and that's kind of how I shaped my life. My kids were exposed to all kind of people, and I had friends, all kind of folk, and I remember my oldest son graduated from college. I mean, this kid is really brilliant, and he graduated from college, magna cum laude, and then took a job in London. And somebody said to me, how a little black boy from DC get to London? And I said, he's smart, he's capable, he's been exposed to things. We live in DC. We went to Smithsonian every weekend. We had no money. They were free. And so my kids had all kinds of exposure. And so it didn't seem unusual for him to be going to London He applied for all of these internships and he got one in London with Price Waterhouse. And that wasn't unusual to me, but to the person that said that, it was. And so, I try to teach the children to look at life like, that saying, you get lemons, you make lemonade, or look for the bright light or whatever, all those kind of sayings. And that's why I try to raise my kids. This is hard, and it's hard for me because I'm African American, people assume I only fight for African American children. I fight for all children, every child. I fight for America's children, but of course I am African American, so I want to make sure our communities are served as well. But that's always been really tough for me.
So the Dr. Martin Luther King saying that we need to judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. That's what Maria and I were raised on. And so, but I've heard that today that is not necessarily popular. Can you address that?
Well, it's popular to me.
Okay, it's popular to you.
There are a lot of different views now, and a lot of the young people are saying one thing or another who have not been through what we've been through, or didn't know Dr. King, or did not hear his sermons or his speeches, and that's unfortunate. And that's why you asked me, what I'm doing now. I'm getting older and all that, and my kids are grown and my grandkids are almost grown. And but that's why it's really important that young people, hear me, young people, listen to the wisdom of their elders. Whatever I am as a woman, it's because I still hear my grandmothers, both of my grandmothers. I still hear their voices in my ear, sharing their lives. One of my grandmothers was a slave, and she has no bitterness, and she had no bitterness, and she shared a lot of things with me. And so I think that's what we have to do. We have to remember that, inside, we're all the same, and we have to find ways to get along. And okay, this is something my mother said to me one time. Do not listen to the loudest voice.
That's a good
Listen to the voice of quiet. That loudest voice ain't always the voice that's giving you the best information. and I've done that, all through my career, all during the legislative fight in Washington. I'm not a screaming hollerer, and I tell parents, listen to my voice. We are going to walk in here and carry ourselves with dignity and grace, and we are going to be listened to beyond anybody else, because we do know how to behave and how to get our voice heard. A reporter told me early in my career, she said, the media sometime will film people cursing and screaming and stuff, and those people get filmed one time and it shows on TV a bunch of times. But people like you, Virginia, they'll keep coming back to you because you're armed with information and you're kind and articulate, and see, that was part of my learning how to speak too, and quiet. I can get excited, but basically I am a even-tempered, quiet person. And that's, my grandmother told us, when people look at you, you want them to see you in honor, be honorable. And I think that's where I'm looked at. Even the opposition has said that over years. The NEA, who was my biggest opponent during our legislative fight, Reg Weaver said, I don't want to debate her because she is too nice and she talks about the children and the parents and makes me look bad. Now, Reg said that too bad, and he would not debate me. So,
because you carried yourself with dignity. I love that. Well, you have been so amazing. I cannot wait to share this podcast with every single person I know. This is, you are just so full of, especially women. I mean, not to be sexist, but you are such a great example. And thank you so much for all the
Thank
wisdom
you.
and the beauty that you shared today.
Yeah, we really
Well,
appreciate having you.
well, Maria and Kelly, I look forward to meeting you at some point in my life. And but I've enjoyed this very much.
Thank
And
you
thank
so much.
you for having me.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
all you've done.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. It's now time for the takeaways. Maria, you and I have heard the takeaways are the best part of the show.
That's right, Kelly, because the takeaways are curated information, which is what we give to our clients when we coach them.
If you would like to take your performance to the next level in health, life, or leadership, go to our website and schedule your free 30-minute consultation.
Yes, just click on our coaching page and book there. We're looking forward to bringing out the champion in you.
And now, the takeaways. Oh, the takeaways, Maria, from Miss Virginia Walden Ford, the star of a Netflix movie. Actually, she gets played by Uzo Aduba, who is one of my favorite actors, even though I can't say her name. She's from Orange is the New Black, but Miss Virginia's story is out there on Netflix. We really encourage you guys to listen to the whole podcast. We got a lot out of Miss Virginia that isn't even in the movie.
She's
It's incredible.
amazing.
We said it was like
She's-
drinking from the well of wisdom.
Yes.
And the takeaways, we had many on this, but we
Yeah.
are going to just do
Was scribbling
one
down
each.
notes. I
Yeah,
have
so-
takeaways that I'm just going to keep to myself and just
No. Okay. So what is your first takeaway, Maria?
I loved just everything about this woman, but one of the things that she said, and I asked her about in interviews, she said you have a responsibility to make a difference, and it doesn't have to be a big thing like she's doing, but when you see a need, when you feel your heartstrings being tugged by something that's not right, then it's your responsibility to do something about it. So that's one of my takeaways. And I think I've taught my kids that, but I might not have said it right outright. So that's something I want to carry away.
Yeah,
Right.
even she said, even as small as mowing your lawn,
Yeah.
mowing your lawn and making your yard look nice, then the street follows along.
Right.
Yeah, there were so many takeaways, but one of the things that she said is finding your voice. And I asked her, how do you find your voice?
Yeah.
And she said, we all have stories.
Right.
And so when she was trying to lead people, and this was not an easy group to lead,
Right.
she connected to people by telling her story. And so that's what I think the takeaway is know your story, share your story, no matter how small you think your story is or how ununique you think your story is. It really is unique. I love to hear everybody's stories. We always ask, what's your story?
Yeah, tell me a Kelly story. Tell me
a story.
Zoom story.
Is find your voice, and your voice comes through stories, and your stories connect you to others, and then your message is heard through your story. So but there were lots, and I hope everyone will check them out. Check out the whole interview.
It's a beautiful interview.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to Miss Virginia. Well, Kelly, I love you. So great to be
love
with
you
you.
too. Yes,
And get
I'm
to
so glad
drink
we got
together.
to share this. Yes, this is amazing.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this for months. All right,
Yeah.
love you. Bye-bye.
Love you too. Bye.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast with host Kelly Palace and Maria Parker. Champions Mojo is produced by Cabra Media, and a new episode debuts every Tuesday. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Follow Champions Mojo on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @Champions Mojo.